A couple weeks ago, I did an episode looking at the comments from a Staff Sergeant Habel with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, where she suggested that someone who starts leaning towards traditional values, that may be a sign that they're an extremist, and you should be concerned about that. The RCMP subsequently sent a clarification, at least to Epoch Times, probably other places, but that's where I saw it. So today on Don't Talk TV, I want to take a look at that, quote, clarification, unquote, and then we'll discuss why, in my view, that clarification doesn't ring true, and why, looking at some principles of criminal law, we can see that the original statement is, in fact, the true one. Hello, my name is Nicholas Wansbutter. I'm a lawyer in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, and welcome to Don't Talk TV. So many of you may remember, and hopefully we've got back with us a number of the new viewers that we had from a couple weeks ago, where we looked at the comments of RCMP spokeswoman Staff Sergeant Habel, who was talking about the arrest of 4 individuals in Quebec who allegedly were trying to form some sort of anti-government militia with plans to seize some small part of Quebec City. And in connection with that, a CBC News reporter asked her, essentially, how can Canadians help prevent this sort of thing from happening? So the RCMP, as I said, did issue a clarification. So let's take a look at that clarification here. Before we look at their clarification, let's have a quick look at that video once again to refresh ourselves on the context and exactly what was said and how it came out. So here we've got the RCMP clip up again.
I wanted to ask, when you're talking about seeing individuals engage in that anti-authority and perhaps escalating their beliefs or their motives in that level, I'm wondering what the public can do in order to be vigilant, or what they can do to help in trying to ensure that there is safety and security on that front.
Well, radicalization in general quite often will show by people isolating themselves and changing their behavior, like changing what they're saying on a subject, like becoming more extremist. And if someone was very believed in equal gender rights, but all of a sudden are leaning towards like traditional values, and that might be a sign that they're becoming more extremist. But we also have to remember that having the most extremist.
So just stop that right there. I think that's the key piece to that. As I said on the episode a couple weeks ago, it's not correct when she follows up with that, saying you can have whatever beliefs you want as long as it doesn't lead to violence. We have a whole playlist, the hate crime playlist, showing how people are in fact criminalized for words, not violent actions, if those words are unacceptable. So let's have a look now at the clarification that the RCMP gave. This is from the Noé Chartier at Epoch Times wrote this. So they're clarifying the remarks made by the officer, and they say that the RCMP is in no way applying that embracing traditional values makes an individual radical or extreme. This, according to a spokeswoman, Marie-Ève Breton. So that's what she told the Epoch Times. So the RCMP is in no way implying that embracing traditional values makes an individual radical or extreme. So the problem with that comment is that's the exact opposite of what Staff Sergeant Habel said. We just played the clip. You can see exactly what she said is that, quote, leaning towards traditional values may be a sign that someone's becoming extremist. This isn't even just saying having traditional values makes you an extremist. Leaning towards traditional values may be a sign that someone's becoming an extremist. My view is that what happened here is that Staff Sergeant Habel said the quiet part out loud and revealed what the RCMP's, at least at the higher levels, what their attitude is, what their views are, what sorts of things they're looking for. Now, the clarification was issued in light of the backlash, and the fact that there was a backlash, and that, in my view, that backlash was objectively foreseeable. It's a term we use in law, but I think it's self-explanatory. That shows that this is what we call an admission against interest. And this is something going back to the 17th century has been held to be admissible in common law. And we'll take a look at a case here. This is Her Majesty the Queen in Cibulka, Czibulka. It's from 2004, so that's why it's Her Majesty the Queen, because it was the Queen back in 2004. And this was a case that, among other things, had a look at this long-standing concept of admission against interest. So I'll just read this passage here, and then I think you'll see how we can infer that the comments of Staff Sergeant Habel accurately reflect the attitude of the upper echelons of the RCMP versus the clarification, because her comments would constitute this admission against interest, given the reasonably foreseeable backblow. So, as the court says here, the statement against interest exception to the hearsay rule, so hearsay, of course, being statements outside of court that are tendered for their truth, normally that's inadmissible, but there's a few exceptions. One of them being statements against interest, confessions being the most common. So it says that case, the trial judge made reference to it, requires an examination of the contents of the statement to determine whether the statement was in fact against interest. However, in looking at the statement, the court does not assume the contents of the statement to be true. Rather, it looks to the fact that the statement was made. The circumstantial guarantee of trustworthiness derives from the fact that people are unlikely to make false statements against their interest. An example of this would be to admit that if one were to admit that they still owe a debt, similarly to an extent the fact that the letter in the Cibulka case portrays the deceased, the person who wrote it, in a bad light, tends to somewhat enhance that part of the letter. So that's where I say that the statement that someone tending towards traditional values may be a sign they're becoming an extremist. That's an admission against interest, because you'd expect there to be some pushback on that. And I think that just slipped out in circumstances where I would expect a PR person, a spokesman, to be a bit better prepared than that. But when you see the way it plays out, it seems to be a bit of an unexpected question, and she's trying to come up with an answer off the cuff. So that brings us to another exception in law where hearsay statements are allowed because of these guarantees of reliability, these indicators that it's very unlikely the person is lying. And that is spontaneous utterance. So now we've got a 1988 decision from the Ontario Court of Appeal, Her Majesty the Queen in Con. This was affirmed or agreed by the Supreme Court of Canada, agreed to this ruling and confirmed it. So the Ontario Court of Appeal said there that in considering the admissibility of the hearsay statement reproduced above, it will be recalled that Ratton and the Queen established that a spontaneous statement made under the stress or pressure of a dramatic or startling act or event and relating to such an occasion may be admissible as an exception to the hearsay rule. The stress or pressure of the act or event must be such that the possibility of concoction or deceptive can be safely discounted. So I think that's the key here, that the deception can be safely discounted. And in my view, we can safely discount that Sergeant Habel was trying to deceive us into thinking that this is what the RCMP is concerned about. I mean, there's no reason to do that. That goes back to the admission against interest, but also because of the spontaneity of it. The statement need not be made strictly contemporaneously to the occurrence, so long as the stress or pressure created by it is ongoing and the statement is made before there has been time to contrive and misrepresent. So that's the key here, because her statement is made immediately after being asked that question by the CBC anchor. There's no time to concoct or fabricate that answer. So where the spontaneity of the statement is clear and the danger of fabrication is remote, the evidence should be received. I would suggest, having just watched that video, it is a spontaneous statement. She's asked this. She has to come up with an answer on the fly. It's not stressful in terms of seeing a dead body or having someone's gun to your head, but it's still stressful in terms of you're on the public stage. You're trying to come up with a reasonable sounding answer for millions of viewers in the context of this high profile case. So she comes out with this spontaneous answer, And the danger of fabrication is beyond remote for the reasons that I said in terms of the admission against interest. So we look at these principles in criminal law that are used in assessing statements, assessing whether something normally admissible can be admitted because it has such guarantees of trustworthiness. I would suggest that the comments made on CBC by Staff Sgt. Habel have those hallmarks of trustworthiness, meaning that she was speaking what she really believed. And as a spokeswoman who's put in that position for a reason, I think it's very reasonable inference that she would be aware of what the beliefs of higher up in the RCMP are and some of the discussions surrounding this case. Contrary-wise, looking at the so-called clarification statement, that's a prepared statement made with plenty of time to think about it. That's not a spontaneous statement, and it's not an admission against interest. That's them trying to do damage control at this point. So I would suggest that the clarification is much less trustworthy insofar as being an accurate representation of the attitude of the RCMP. Again, at the higher levels, this is not some anti-police rant or saying that the all RCMP officers are on the lookout for families with stay-at-home moms to lock them up and put people in concentration camps. I mean, that's not the case. What this is showing those attitudes at the top. And the problem is officers at the low levels will, as with anyone, I mean, this isn't singling police out. We saw during COVID, almost everyone was willing to do what they were told and just follow orders, just doing their job, etc. Police are human beings. Same tends to apply to them, similar to other people. But the point is, this clarification, in my view, does nothing to undermine the reliability or the believability or the suggestion that Staff Sgt. Habel was expressing what the RCMP, but more importantly, the government, the Liberal Party of Canada, who've been in charge of Canada for 10 years and will be for the foreseeable future, what their view is, who they think is dangerous, and who they want their federal police force and intelligence agencies to be focused on, to be suspicious of, and to be looking at. And then, of course, there's all kinds of dangers with that, because when you're already suspicious, it's like a racial profiling type of situation that courts have often complained about, where things that are actually innocent will take on a sinister veneer to it when you're looking for sinister things and you're expecting sinister things. So I hold to the comments that I made in episode 259. A number of other lawyers have made similar comments. I know Mr. Miller, I saw him on a podcast with, forget his first name, I think it's Harry Faulkner, expressing some of these similar things and saying how like the very prosecution, the charges laid, show that political bent to it, because by overcharging, laying these terrorism charges in circumstances where we're not seeing much terrorism yet, maybe some firearms and possession of illegal items, maybe they're probably in trouble for that, but jacking it all the way up to terrorism sends a strong message of reprobation on these individuals. I mean, we'll have to learn more about them. A lot of people that get called traditional value people by police don't even have traditional values, in my view, but we're getting a little bit off topic there. I think the point, I hope, has been made. And if you didn't see it, check out episode 259 for some more to see what I'm talking about here. But all that said, this episode and this show is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, I encourage you to call a lawyer. You can call another lawyer, or if you want to call me, my contact information is listed below. If you have questions with relation to Don't Talk TV, or a suggestion or a request for a show topic, please send that email to the email address that's going across the bottom right now, not to my wansbetter.com address, don'ttalktv@protonmail.com. That's where you'll get a response with respect to Don't Talk TV. And we value questions and suggestions, and I'm very happy with all the comments and discussions we've seen in the comment box. I hope that keeps up. And of course, if you found this video at all interesting, helpful, or informative, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, following us on social media, but especially hitting that like button is very important to triggering YouTube's algorithm and helping us to get the word out more.